Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. We are back with another episode of Let's Talk About It. We are a couple days away from the NBA season starting, so it's time to get out my predictions. We're going to be going through Eastern Conference standings and the Western Conference standings, all my award predictions for all NBA teams and all defensive teams as well. Going into our playoff predictions as well, going into from the play-in all the way up to the finals and who I have making the finals and everything like that. And also at the end, we'll be breaking down 5 of my NBA hot takes going into the year. I'm going to be posting my hot takes and my standings on my personal X account and looking at the hot takes. I might add some more than 5 going into the year just because I do think of a lot of kind of different hot takes until I post this episode tomorrow morning on Friday morning. But we have a couple days before the NBA season, so we got to get this episode out. But without further ado, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. We're going to be having a lot of basketball content throughout the NBA season and also NFL content throughout the NFL season as well. But without further ado, we can start out with our Eastern Conference standings, starting from 15 going up to 1. Looking at this, I have the Washington Wizards at 15. I just think this is a year. They're in the middle of a rebuild. They still need to evaluate some of the talent they do have. They have a couple guys I do think they should be looking to move. Jonas Valanciunas, Malcolm Brogdon, when he gets healthy. I know he just had surgery. Kyle Kuzma, who knows what they're going to do with that situation. They kind of gave up Denny Abdiyah, which I thought was a dumb move on their part because I thought he was really someone who could really be a part of your young core going forward. But I do think Jordan Poole has a better year than last year. I think he does have a slight bounce back year, and I think he has more of the year that people thought he was going to have last year. This year, maybe not 25, 26 a game like a lot of people were saying he could have going into last year, but I think he could definitely be just more efficient and just more comfortable in that situation in Washington going forward. But I still do have him at 15. At 14, my 14 and 13, I can really see an argument swapped. I have the Brooklyn Nets at 14. They're a team that should be heavy sellers at the deadline. They have a ton of assets, actually, to even bolster up what they have for their future assets as well. And Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Ben Simmons. If Ben Simmons could ever get it together, he's on a contract year as well. Dennis Schroeder is a good guard that I can see on a contending team. Like, they have a lot of avenues to get more and more assets, and I think they're going to be big sellers at the deadline. That's why I have them at 14. At 13, I have Toronto Raptors. I think they're a top-heavy team. They're still trying to figure out the best fitting pieces around their big new young big three, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and Scotty Barnes. And I feel like this is going to be more of a feeling out process kind of year to see who and what direction they want to go in building and constructing this team. At 12, I have the Chicago Bulls. Now, this is a team I think could either be a fringe play-in team, but they should really be looking more so to being in the kind of the tanking realm. I feel like this team is still looking for the guy. I know Kobe White had a breakout year, but I think they have assets that they can move to get more assets for their future. Zach LaVine, we know he's been a trade target for a number of years now. Same with Nikola Vucevic. I think Lonzo Ball, depending on his play and how he comes off of his injury, is really going to determine his value on the market. He's in a contract year, and you just extended Josh Giddey. You have Kobe White. You have Ayo Dosunmu. That backcourt room is a little bit cluttered at the moment, and I feel like you could definitely move off of Lonzo Ball for some better fitting pieces for this roster. At number 11, I have the Charlotte Hornets. Now, I think this is all predicated off LaMelo Ball's health. If he's healthy, they have a really strong 1-2 punch with him and Brandon Miller. You know what I'm getting from Miles Bridges. Trey Mann in the 6-man role is going to be very interesting to see. I wonder how he develops with that. I love the addition of a Josh Green in this lineup. I think him and Grant Williams can bring this team a little bit more of a defensive mindset. Mark Williams going into the year hurt, but I think this Charlotte Hornets team with this kind of new coaching, kind of new infrastructure, it's seeming like if they get a nice healthy season from LaMelo Ball, I won't be surprised if they're in the play-in hunt, but I do think this is this like 1 through really 10, you could even argue 11, depending on what the Bulls look like, 12. This is probably the most talented I've seen the Eastern Conference in quite some time, maybe even in my lifetime of watching basketball. I think this Eastern Conference is so insanely deep of talent compared to what has been in past years, like especially if you're talking about the 1 through 8 teams, like excluding the play-in. If you're just looking at the 1 through 8, I could really think of a case for any of those teams to make a run, right? This is a very deep team. I feel like they've really caught up to the West in terms of that talent. And I think the Charlotte Hornets could be a fringe play-in team for sure. They just need a healthy season out of LaMelo Ball. And I do think they're a team that I could see pivot and try to make a deadline move to maybe make another push to be more in that play-in hunt as well. But I do have them looking on the outside right now at 11. At 10, this is a team where I could see an argument for flipping the Atlanta Hawks and the Charlotte Hornets, because I have the Atlanta Hawks at 10. This is more of a feeling out year. I feel like they're kind of into another era of the Trae Young era, to where they're like somewhat in a retool year, to where like they got Ricochet, Jalen Johnson, they need to take another step, but like Trae Young's back to being the dominant ball handler, point guard, which I think that's where he's best at. But who's the number 2 on this team, right? You still have somebody like Clint Capella that could get moved. Bogdanovich, who I feel like can still get moved. DeAndre Hunter, I feel like could get moved as well. So I feel like this is a big retool year for the Atlanta Hawks, and I can really see them finishing outside the plan as well. Just because I don't really know where that number 2 scoring option is going to come from. It's probably going to be Bogdanovich off that bench, but like, I'm interested to see kind of the pieces unfold for the Atlanta Hawks going forward this season. I wouldn't be shocked if they were not a play-in team, because I think in their best interest they should probably take another year to retool and really get this roster right. But they have somebody like Trae Young, who, if he's healthy, can really carry this team offensively into the play-in tournament at least. At number 9, shocking, I have the Detroit Pistons. I think the Bickerstaff move, going more into kind of a defensive-oriented mindset for this team, I think he's going to do wonders. I just think that he has better talent in terms of Cade Cunningham. He has better talent around him. Tobias Harris, I feel like, is going to be a nice little 1-2 punch that they have going on in Detroit. They just got veterans in that room, which is something I think the Detroit Pistons desperately need. You bring in Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr. I already like Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart. I think they complement each other pretty well. I already love Cade Cunningham as a player. Interested to see the fit with Jaden Ivey. So have the Thompson twin. Now you have Ron Holland out of the draft. So you have a good amount of pieces on this Detroit roster. They just need to really put it together. I think they have the talent. I think they have the veterans that they are needed to help Cade Cunningham be the best version of himself, which Malik Beasley can shoot it, Tim Hardaway can shoot it, and Tobias Harris is a proven shooter and just scorer in general. He's somebody else who you can rely on with the ball in his hands to create. And I think you can say what you want about Tobias Harris, but in this situation for him on a Detroit team that's not really has title aspirations, I think Tobias Harris can really be a solid 15 to 20 point a game scorer on this team with the opportunity he's going to be given. And I think it's just great moves that they made in the offseason. I feel like this Detroit Pistons team is actually going to hit the corner, and we're going to see a great year out of Cade, and they're going to make the play-in as the 9th seed. Going into the top 8, still in the play-in, I have the Miami Heat. Like I said, it's tough. Like predicting the Eastern Conference this year is very, very tough. Miami Heat here. Jimmy Butler contract year, big year for Tyler Hero as well. Their kind of offseason move of them not making any, it was really, in a sense, Terry Rozier at the end of last year, but Terry Rozier had I want to say it was a neck or a back injury, but he seems to be healthy going into the year. They need a big jump from one of their young guys, and Jaime Jaquez need another jump from him. I love the Kawhi Leonard pick in the draft. I think they actually did a great job in possibly showing more Bam Adebayo at the 4, and I like that little front court between Bam and Khalil, and then you put Jimmy Butler at the 3. I think defensively that's going to be one of their better lineups. But I do think they're going to finish 8th. But I think this is a position that they are perfectly fine with being in. They know what they've obviously done it from the plan before. This is not something I think they should strive for every year. But with how talented the Eastern Conference is, and from a regular season perspective and lens, I just think there are a lot of teams that I would put above Miami, but I do think Miami is still a dangerous playoff team. At 7, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is an interesting thing. I am very, very high on the Kenny Atkinson move. I'm very high on Evan Mobley taking a leap this year. But I think this team, if they can get a combination of Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell from what they got last year when Evan Mobley and Darius Garland were out, and get the best version of Darius Garland, all-star version of Darius Garland, with a leap from Evan Mobley, I can see them being even higher. But I'm still not one who is very sold on the Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell backcourt. I think at times this team can still struggle offensively. That's where I think Kenny Atkinson is going to be taking this team to a whole nother level. I think he's going to be able to unlock the potential of an Evan Mobley. But I still just do think this team didn't address what they needed to in the offseason, which was getting a solid wing. I think Jalen Tyson out of the draft is solid, but he is a rookie going in this year. So I think they definitely could have, and it could happen at this year's deadline, they could pivot and make a move to go get a small forward, which I just think they could have went and got just a serviceable small forward to really give this team a little bit more size at that position. And I think that's still where this team is lacking. In a conference where it's really littered with a bunch of good wings. Like you look at the Celtics with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. The Pacers have Pascal Siakam. The Knicks have OG and Mikal. Philly has Paul George. Bucks have really, I guess, Giannis. I guess you could put him at the wing, but they have Chris Middleton as well, Jimmy Butler, Paolo Banchero, Franz. Like they're in a conference where it's littered with wings, and I don't really think they addressed that need in the offseason like they should have. But I still do think they're going to finish as a 7th seed. I'm really high on Kenny Atkinson for this future, of the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I think this is like a year where they realize maybe we should pivot away from the Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell backcourt, and that's when you see a possible move at the deadline or in the offseason. But I do think this team is still talented enough to finish as the 7th seed. Now, at the 6th seed, I have the Orlando Magic. Super high on the Orlando Magic. Love the KCP addition. I think they're going to get a really, really good year out of Paolo, especially in terms of numbers-wise. They just need a consistent shooting year from their team. I don't know what their starting line is going to be. Still a little bit questionable about some of the depth. What are you going to get from Anthony Black? Cole Anthony, I think it's the perfect 6-man off your bench scoring-wise. Are we seeing more points for Paolo? Is the starting line going to be Suggs, KCP, Franz, Paolo, Wendell Carter? Is that going to be the lineup? I think this team's going to be one of the best defensive teams in all of basketball. I really do think they're going to be anywhere from top 3 to 5 for sure. But is that offensive identity that I think is going to be coming out of this Orlando Magic team, is that going to be something that is consistent throughout the year? But I think they're still going to be hanging their hat on their defense throughout the entire regular season. And with that being said, I think they could finish higher, but I have them at the 6th seed right now, just because I think the top end talent in the Eastern Conference is so good at this point, to where if every team is healthy, I think the Orlando Magic fall at 6, but I do think they could really fall within anywhere. I think they could realistically be a top 4 team just because of that defense alone. Because I think that defense is going to be very, very, very elite over there in Orlando. But I got them at the 6th seed right now. 5 seed, I have the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, they're probably the hardest team to predict, right, in the Eastern Conference because of how close all these seedings is going to be. It's going to be 1-2 game differences. The Joel Embiid not playing back-to-back things, I don't know how much to look into that. I kind of got to see that take that with a grain of salt until I actually see him not playing back-to-backs, which I don't really care if he's not playing back-to-backs as long as he's healthy for the playoffs. But if he's not playing back-to-backs, it could affect this team. I think this team is definitely better than last year's team. If they were to sustain a Joel Embiid injury, I think they can really stay afloat. I know Paul George just had the hyperextension in his leg, but I think this team has the depth this year and the makeup and the coaching to be able to sustain an injury. At some point, you're going to get Paul George back. It's not anything catastrophic. You're going to get Paul George back at some point. And even if you do lose to Joel Embiid, you get another year of Tyrese Maxey, who showed last year he can carry the load, but he just needs a little bit of help. You have Kelly Oubre, Jared McCain. You have you even brought in Yabusele from the Olympics. You have guys that I feel like can really, really help and keep this team afloat if they were to sustain a Joel Embiid injury. But I do think this team is going to be healthy for once going into the playoffs, and I think this team is going to finish as the 5 seed. They don't really care where they finish. They just want to be a healthy team, so I think the 5 seed is a perfect seeding for them. And when you think about it, they were in the play-in last year with Joel Embiid missing all that time, and they were a top team in all basketball. So if you kind of get the best of both worlds where you're resting Joel Embiid and you're still staying afloat, I think the 5 seed is the perfect place for them to end up. Now going to the 4 seed, Milwaukee Bucks. Another hard team to rank because of the injuries history this team has suffered. But I do think at the end of the day, you have Damian Lillard, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, the continuity's there. You're going into the season with Doc Rivers. You're really just hoping, and I think he's the X factor from a more healthy season from Chris Middleton, because we saw his impact in the playoffs alone and how much he does mean to this team. I love the Gary Trent Jr. edition. I love the Taurean Prince edition as well, just giving him some more length and defense as well. but I do think the Milwaukee Bucks are still going to be a top team in the Eastern Conference. I got them finishing at the 4 seed. At the 3 seed, I have the New York Knicks. Now, I think this New York Knicks team, yes, gave up some depth, but they went and got a center that can really space. I'm interested to see how this team plays in the regular season because we know how Tibbs is in terms of minutes, and this depth is still a question mark. But I do think they're still good enough. I think that starting 5 is elite. I think the defense between the wings of Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby are perfect fits next to a Brunson and a Karl-Anthony Towns. Then you have Josh Hart that's going to do a little bit of everything. I think Deuce McBride is going to have a very, very good year off the bench for them. And I think Deuce McBride is another reason where they were kind of comfortable moving somebody like a Dante DiVincenzo because they still have Deuce McBride in their back pocket, somebody who has shown flashes in the past of really being a go-to guy off that bench that can also create. So I really am having high hopes for this New York Knicks team. Questionable about the depth, but I think they still finish as a 3 seed. 2 seed, I have the Boston Celtics. This is a team where, coming off of winning a championship, I could say their 2 best players are even more hungry than they were last year. When you see Jason Tatum and what he went through in the Olympics and Jaylen Brown not even making the USA roster in general, we know how the thoughts were about those 2 things. So I think you're going into a season where, yes, you don't have Kristaps Porzingis. I think Al Horford is going to do just fine filling that role. You still have probably one of the best starting 5s in basketball. And your 2 star players seemingly are more hungry this year to prove people wrong than they were last year. I have them finishing as the 2 seed just because I do think at times they're going to really, really miss Kristaps Porzingis. But I just think you're the 1 seed. I'm not going to say it's going to be a runaway. It's going to be a little bit surprising. But I think the 1 seed, I do have the Indiana Pacers. I think this is a team that is built and made for the regular season. I think with the way they play, the depth they have, the moves that they could pivot to and make at the deadline to get even better, I think the Indiana Pacers are the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference this year. It's going to be one of my hot takes at the end of the video as well. I just think this team is made for the regular season. I think with the way they play, I love the way they're coached, and the depth that they do have at different positions to be very versatile in who they play. I do think they will eventually cash in on some of that depth to go get another really all-star caliber player, because I think that's what they're missing in terms of really competing in the Eastern Conference. I know they made the run last year, but you got to look at who they played and the injuries that they came with. I'm not saying that is diminishing their run at all, but looking at the context within that situation for them. But I do think they finish as the 1 seed. I think they are made for the regular season, man. I really think the Pacers are going to be a dominant regular season team that a lot of teams can't keep up with that offense and that up and down style throughout the regular season. Now going into the Western Conference standings, going from 15-1, 15 I have the Utah Jazz because they're another team where I'm kind of having the mindset of them selling a lot of their assets at the deadline, and they're in a draft situation to where like they probably want a top 3 to 5 pick this year. So I think the Utah Jazz are going to finish as 15. Portland Trailblazers, they're in an interesting spot to where like they just have a lot going on that roster, developmental wise, to where like they have talent in DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant, Shane Sharp's coming into the year banged up, but like they need to start prioritizing development over wins and losses. And this is going to kind of wrap around into a hot take I have at the end of the video, but going into the Portland Trailblazers, I just think this is a big developmental year. They need to see where they really have in Shane Sharp, Scoot Henderson, they bring in Denny Abdia, which I think is a great fit. But like they have a lot going on there developmental-wise to where I think they kind of need to focus on that more than wins and losses. I have them at 14. 13, I have the LA Clippers. Now, thankfully, right before this episode, I got the news on Twitter that Kawhi Leonard is going to be out indefinitely to start the year with knee inflammation. So that was already going into why I had the Clippers this low in general. They're just not a roster that is built to withstand a Kawhi Leonard injury. Like, you got to think last couple years, you have Paul George, now you had James Harden. They could definitely keep you afloat with the coaching of Ty Lue and the depth that they did have. But now you're looking at no Paul George, no Kawhi Leonard. Then you have James Harden kind of out there running the show by himself with Norman Powell, scoring-wise. So it's going to be very interesting to see where this team does pivot to. I think this team is going to be desperate to make a move. The Clippers are not shy at making any kind of moves throughout the season, and I think this is where you could possibly see them pivot and make a move to get them out of this position. But as of right now, where it stands, I have them being the 13th seed. At 12th seed, I have the San Antonio Spurs. Not as high on them. If this was Chris Paul, like when Chris Paul first got to OKC with that young team, I would have way different expectations for this team, but I think they're still a year or two away. I do like the addition of Chris Paul. I like the addition of Harrison Barnes. They're moving in the right direction, but they would need a crazy breakout year from Devin Vassell, a crazy leap from Keldon Johnson. They would need Chris Paul to turn their time back a little bit. Harrison Barnes would need to be like an efficient like 15 a night for them to really be a successful team, especially in the Western Conference, where I feel like at least 1 through 11, and when the Clippers are healthy, 12, I have them above the Spurs. I mean, it's tough out here in the Western Conference. Like, there's really only 3 teams in the Western Conference, in the Jazz, Portland, and the Spurs, that I think are just not talented enough to really compete in the West. The Clippers, when they're healthy, when they have Kawhi Leonard healthy with James Harden, they're definitely talented enough to compete in the West. But with hindsight, now that we know that Kawhi Leonard's going to be missing a good chunk of the season at the start, Clippers I do have at 13, Spurs at 12. At 11, I have the Pelicans. They're a move away. I don't know how I feel about the fit on this roster. I like the DeJounte Murray pickup. Him in that backcourt, CJ McCollum, just gives me a little bit of kind of, not in that same sense, because CJ McCollum and Trae Young are 2 different players, but I just feel like that backcourt is still questionable. I love the depth that they do have into Jordan Hawkins, Jose Alvarado. Trey Murphy's coming into the season hurt, but I think he's going to end up being healthy at some point. What are they going to do with Brandon Ingram? Is Zion going to stay healthy? What are they going to do about the center spot? They're having Herb Jones apparently play the 5 for this team. Big question marks about that. It could either be the best thing or the worst thing for the Pelicans. So I'm really interested to see how this Pelican season does turn out. But as of right now, with what they do have at the lack of the center position, I'm going to have to say I do put them at 11 in terms of the Western Conference. At 10, I have the Houston Rockets. I've seen a lot of people very high on this Rockets team. I still feel like they are that move away. They're going to go star hunting. I think they're going to be very active star hunting at the deadline. They have so much depth and young talent and draft capital to where they could pivot and make a move for a star if they were to become available. But I just think they're still that one move away. I think that they need to still focus on the development. What are they going to do with Jalen Green? They drafted Reed Shepherd. I think he's a great fit. They have a lot going on the roster. They're well coached in Ime Udoka. But in terms of top-end talent, I know they have Sengun. I'm a real believer in Sengun. I really do like Jalen Green. I think he is the thing that can put them over the top, but that's a big question mark in itself. So looking at the Rockets, I think when they look at the Western Conference, they're a really, really good team. I think they do make the play-in this year as the 10 seed. They could make some noise in there, but as of right now, I do have them finishing at the 10 seed. I could see them really finishing anywhere in that play-in realm, but the Western Conference is tough to predict. I do have them finishing as the 10 seed, though. Number 9, Memphis Grizzlies. This is very interesting. This team, when they're at their full powers, was a top 3 team in the West a couple of years ago. They add Zach Edey, which I think Zach Edey is going to be phenomenal for them, especially pairing him with the John Morant. This is making Triple J really be able to space, because Zach Edey, even in 20 minutes a game, is going to be able to get you double-digit rebounds with his size. So, I really like where this team is going. I do think this team is just lacking a little bit. Maybe just a little bit. Because I don't think, obviously knock on wood, I don't think this team can really withstand a John Morant injury. Just because, like we saw last year, the whole team got hurt last year. But if a John Morant injury does happen, I don't think they're going to be able to withstand that. And I think they're just a little bit small. I don't know how I feel about a Marcus Smart at the 3 or Desmond Bane at the 3. But they have the size to back it up in a Zach Edey and Triple J. So it's going to be very interesting to see. I do have them finishing 9, but they're a team that's very hard to predict, because I think they could finish anywhere from 3 to 9, right? I think they could finish anywhere in that realm. I can say that about a lot of teams in the Western Conference, but I think they're going to be perfectly fine fitting in that realm. But I do see them finishing in the play-in this year, because I do think they're just lacking a little bit of size on the wing, which they could go out and address. But I kind of compare this team to a Cleveland in a way, to where they have a lacking at that small forward position, and they have Vince Williams, they have Gigi Jackson, who Gigi Jackson is hurt at the moment, but that wing spot is kind of like a little hole in that team right now at the 3, to where I feel like they're lacking a little bit of size, kind of comparable to what I said with Cleveland, but I do have them finishing in that play-in realm as well. Number 8, this is going to be one of my hot takes as well. I have the Denver Nuggets finishing at 8. I kind of talked about it in my kind of tier list of where I think the title contenders and the frisky teams and all that kind of stuff in my previous video. I have the Denver Nuggets at 8. I think the Denver Nuggets have kind of that championship window has slightly closed on them. Losing KCP last year, losing Bruce Brown the year before that. Jamal Murray just has not looked the same. Like, even going back to the last playoffs, he has not looked the same. He really only had 2 really good explosive games. I guess you could say about 3 explosive games in the playoffs. Against 2 of them were against the Lakers and 1 of them against the Minnesota Timberwolves. But he has not looked the same even from the Olympics and the preseason. He usually deals with a lot of injuries throughout the year. That's why I think getting Westbrook is a great addition. But I think that only moves the needle so far in terms of a spacing. Looking at this Denver Nuggets team, the thing that makes this offense work so well is, one, you have Nikola Jokic, obviously one of the best players in the world, but the spacing isn't always there. Now you're losing KCP, replacing him with Christian Braun. There's a ton of question marks with the young guys off that bench. Is Michael Porter Jr. going to be able to take a leap to kind of give you a little bit more of just everything outside of just shooting the basketball? Aaron Gordon, he's in a contract year. What does that look like? But I just think this team is a little thin going into the season. I still think they're really well coached. They have Nikola Jokic, so anything can change. But looking at the Western Conference, I think they're a little bit thin. I think they're a team that definitely needs to be looking to make a move at the deadline, but I do have them finishing in the play-in right now. That's kind of going into my hot take about where I think the Denver Nuggets will fall. I think they're just a little bit thin going into the year, and I think they're going to really struggle at certain points of the year, especially if they lose to Jamal Murray throughout certain points of the year. I think they can struggle spacing-wise as well, because now, put this in the scenario, Jamal Murray's been hurt and missed time a good amount every single season. The spacing could really be in question when you run a lineup of Westbrook, Christian Braun, and Aaron Gordon on the court together, right? That's where I'm kind of getting at. And say Jamal Murray could have a completely healthy season. That still doesn't go into the fact that I just haven't seen the same Jamal Murray that we've seen in years past, even though going back to the Olympics, preseason, and going into the last year's playoffs as well. I think this Denver Nuggets team, not saying their championship window is officially closed, but I think there could be a little bit of regression from this team. Number 7, I have the LA Lakers. They're another team hard to rank. Hard to rank. They have LeBron and Anthony Davis. Will Anthony Davis have the best healthy year of his career in a very long time like he did last year? Who knows? But offensively, I think this team is going to take a major leap under JJ Redick, and that's where they were struggling last year. I think JJ Redick is really going to be able to unlock this team offensively and use AD in a way that they haven't been seeing him use in LA. And I think you still have LeBron, you still have AD. I like some of their depth pieces, especially being coached by JJ Redick. I think D'Lo's in for a great year. Same with Austin Reeves. Just under the coaching of JJ Redick alone, I do think them, like a team I am going to talk about next, kind of cap out at this spot unless they go and make some other moves. But I have the LA Lakers in that play-in spot at 7. And then at 6, I have the Golden State Warriors. Golden State Warriors kind of in the same breath as the Lakers. I love the Warriors' depth. Seeing it in the preseason, I love the Anthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, and Buddy Hield pickups. You are still having Gary Payton II, Moses Moody's in talks to get an extension. Interested to see what they do with Jonathan Kuminga. I think Andrew Wiggins is in store for a big bounce back year. Trayce Jackson-Davis in the preseason has really come along, and he's looking like one of the steals of that draft class from the last year's draft. You got Brandon Podziemski. Their main thing is keeping Steph Curry healthy, because Steph Curry has gone through moments where he is injury prone. He is older. He's getting up there in age to where this team, I don't know what the outlook of this team is if he's not on the floor. So having him healthy and Draymond Green on the court locked in, 2 very big things for this team. But I think that depth, and I think defensively, this reminds me a lot of that team, that Warriors team that won the championship. Not so much them having Klay Thompson and Jordan Poole, but like the depth and the defense that team had. You got to think you still had Otto Porter on the team. Klay Thompson was a better defender at this point in his career. Andrew Wiggins gave you a really good year. You had Draymond Green giving you a really good year. Gary Payton II gave you a really good year. I think they can get kind of that same level of production from guys like Anthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, Brandon Podziemski, Gary Payton II, Moses Moody off that bench. Just talking about their depth alone. And I think they can get a big bounce back year from Andrew Wiggins. I think the Warriors can finish above the plan this year and be a top 6 team out west. I think that depth is really, really elite. I think it's top 3 to 5 in the league. And I think if they're really going to have a good stretch of games to start this year, from what I looked at their schedule. So I think they can really get out to an early lead and be able to somewhat withstand maybe Steph Curry getting out of the lineup and things like that. So I think the Golden State Warriors are going to be a top 6 team out west. Looking at number 5, 5th seed, I have the Phoenix Suns. Now, I'm very high on this Phoenix Suns team. I think I could see them finishing even higher. Love the additions at the point guard spot in Tyus Jones, Monte Morris. Huge pickups. I think we're in store from a monster Devin Booker season. Looking at the past couple of seasons, Devin Booker has been able to change his game to fit the team in whatever it is needed. Now this year, now you have 2 point guards. Really, you have, and Devin Booker he's proven he can run the 1, but now you have Bradley Beal as well into that role. So now you have really a good guard rotation, which is something they haven't had really in a couple years, to where Devin Booker can really go back to being a go-to scorer. In the past couple of years, he's been having to set other people up and set himself up at the same time. Devin Booker now going into more of a scorer's mindset. I think we will see more of that defense we saw in the Olympics as well, because he's not so taxed with doing everything. So now we're going to see a scoring mindset Devin Booker. You would have to think Bradley Beal is going to have a better, more healthy season. And Kevin Durant, you still have Kevin Durant. Yeah, I love the addition of Ryan Dunn in the draft. His shot in the preseason has looked very, very good. And if he's able to shoot the 3 ball at a decent enough clip, he's your on-ball defender. He's somebody I think you almost should be starting. He should definitely be in your closing lineups. And I think the small ball lineups that Coach Bud can find with this team is going to be very, very elite. I just think this Phoenix Suns team is really hitting the corner. I think Coach Bud, compared to Frank Vogel, stylistically wise, is a way better fit with what this team wants to do offensively. And I just think this team is really turning the corner. I think the Phoenix Suns are going to finish as the 5 seed. 4 seed, I think the Dallas Mavericks. Question marks, I don't really have any. I think you're going to get a jump from Derek Lively. I wouldn't be surprised if he is your starting center going into the playoffs. But interested to see what the Klay Thompson fit looks like. I think Luka and Kyrie are going to give you what Luka and Kyrie usually give you. I think Najee Marshall is going to be a great Derrick Jones Jr. replacement, kind of fill in. But I'm interested to see what this team looks like, man. I'm interested to see how they utilize Klay Thompson. I think I already know what I'm expecting from this Dallas Mavericks team. So I got the fish at the 4 seed. 3 seed, Minnesota Timberwolves. I think they're going to have a win-win situation with this trade. I think Julius Randle is very, very versatile. And I think that trade, yes, it was contract implications, but going and getting somebody like Julius Randle, who is way more comfortable and plays a lot better on the perimeter compared to Karl-Anthony Towns. He doesn't have the spacing of Cat, but in terms of creating his own shot, he's way, way better. And I think this is something the Wolves lacked last year in the playoffs, is having another shot creator, at least on the perimeter. I think he can do that very, very well compared to a Karl-Anthony Towns, if you know what I'm saying. So I think the Timberwolves are going to finish as a 3 seed. I love DiVincenzo coming off the bench. I mean, that defense and shot creation off the bench that you can't have from a DiVincenzo. You pair him up with Nickeil Alexander-Walker off the bench and a Terrence Shannon, Naz Reid. Man, that bench is deep. And then, I feel like in closing situations when you need to match up and be more versatile, I think Julius Randle and Naz Reid defensively, if you wanted to put Rudy Gobert on the bench, depending on who you're playing, is very dangerous as well. So I think they are going to finish as the 3 seed. My surprise in the Western Conference is the 2 seed, Sacramento Kings. I think the addition of a DeMar DeRozan is huge. People don't talk about it enough. People act like just because DeMar DeRozan is a little bit on the older side, like DeMar DeRozan can't hoop. You're adding DeMar DeRozan with Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox. The only reason this team was not where they were the year before last year is because of the injuries. Losing Malik Monk for the back half of the year. Losing Kevin Huerter. But you look at what they did last year. Great year from Sabonis. Great year from Fox. Looking at Keegan Murray's development as a defender, has a great 3-and-D player. I think he's going to turn into one of the better 3-and-D players in the league. You add a DeMar DeRozan, another go-to scorer next to a De'Aaron Fox a late game, pairing that up with a Malik Monk, Jalen Carter out of the draft. They are in a prime position. And from the looks of it from a couple days ago, they are pivoting to still look to go add a Zach LaVine, Brandon Ingram type of player, which I'm very excited for. If they go make a pivot and make another move like that, this Sacramento Kings team is going to be very, very, very dangerous. I think they have one of the best underrated players in the league in Sabonis as well. They're really, really well coached. And Mike Brown, I'm very excited for the Sacramento Kings season, especially if they can pivot and go make a move like that. But even if they don't, I think this team's good enough to finish as the second seed out west. Number 1 seed, OKC Thunder. Short and sweet. I think they have one of the best rosters, top to bottom, in the league. You have an MVP candidate. You have 2 budding all-star caliber players in Chet and Jalen Williams. You have a defender in Alex Caruso. You bring in Isaiah Hartenstein, who reports say he's going to be out for a little bit to start the year. Nothing crazy, groundbreaking, but you can put Chet at the 5, then your rotation is going to be just fine. So looking at that, this team has the depth. MVP caliber player like the OKC team, we know what they're going to bring. Going into it, we can get into our awards predictions going into the season. I have 3 for every single award, kind of my top 3, how I think it will shape up. MVP, I have SGA, Devin Booker, and Jason Tatum. I think SGA is going to be right in that same position where he was last year. Devin Booker, I think him back has the scorer's mindset at that 2 guard. I just think he's going to open the doors for him. I think he's going to easily average above 30 points a game on this Phoenix Suns team, getting set up by Tyus Jones. I think he's in for a monster year. And then I have Jason Tatum, somebody who I feel like is probably the most hungry player going into next season from what it transpired with the Olympics. I think he wins the MVP this year. Jason Tatum is my favorite to win the MVP this year. Basing off what I've seen him go through in the Olympics, I think he is just going into this season, going on a tear. I think this Boston Celtics team is going to be obviously top 3 in their conference. I think Jason Tatum is going to be the favorite to win the MVP, and I'm picking him to win the MVP this year. I just think the mindset that this Boston Celtics team is going to have next year, I feel like they're still feeling like they're going a little bit overlooked. And I think Jason Tatum is one of those players that is feeling like, what more do they want me to do? All right, I'll go out and win the MVP the next year after not playing in the Olympics. I see that narrative starting to form, and I think Jason Tatum is going to have a monster year. He is my MVP for this upcoming season. MIP, my top 3, Emmanuel Quickley, Evan Mobley, Jonathan Kuminga. I'm going with Evan Mobley. I think the pairing with Kenny Atkinson and what we've seen from Kenny Atkinson and his coaching career from a developmental standpoint is going to be huge. I think Evan Mobley unlocks that offensive game that many people have been wanting to see from him for the past couple of years, and I think he really finds his own. And I think you really see a world where he takes that big of a jump to where like they're like, okay, we can be fine moving off of Jared Allen to better improve our roster elsewhere, right? That's the kind of jump I think Evan Mobley is going to take. I think he can get to where anywhere between 20 to 22 and 10 a night. That's what I think Evan Mobley can do under Kenny Atkinson as their new head coach. Rookie of the year, top 3 I have Zach Edey, Stephon Castle, Dalton Knecht. Dalton Knecht is going to be an interesting one. I think his spacing is definitely going to be needed on this LA Lakers team. Stephon Castle, because I do see a world where possibly you move Chris Paul, but I think Stephon Castle, I think he has to start. I think he's that talented and that good. And I think his fit with Wemby is going to be amazing. Year 1, I don't have him winning Rookie of the Year. I have Zach Edey winning Rookie of the Year. Out of all the rookies going into this season, I think he is in the prime position to put up the numbers to win Rookie of the Year and the best fitting situation. He's going to be the 5. There's really nobody in his way of playing time. You can move Triple J to the 4. And we've already seen, like in short sample size, in like 15, 20 minutes in the preseason, him putting up double-doubles. You add a John Morant downhill to that situation. John Morant drives. It's either you're giving up a John Morant dunk or a Zach Edey dunk. So they're got to pick your poison. I think Zach Edey is my pick to win the Rookie of the Year this year for sure. Coach of the Year, Rick Carlisle, Mike Brown, JB Bickerstaff. JB Bickerstaff's an interesting one because I think if the Detroit Pistons do make a play and push, I think he could definitely be in considerations from what they went through last year. Mike Brown, Barry Howell, Mike Brown, the Sacramento Kings finish as the 2 seed. He could be in considerations as well. But the Indiana Pacers I do have as the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And I think Rick Carlisle gets that award. 6th Man of the Year, I have Dante DiVincenzo, Malik Monk, and Deuce McBride. I think this goes to Dante DiVincenzo, somebody who I feel like is coming into the season very motivated. I am interested to see, because I do see a world where he starts next to Anthony Edwards at certain cases, but I think if he does come off the bench, him and Naz Reid off that bench, I think he could be in 6th Man of the Year considerations. That's who I'm picking to win this award. Depoy, I have Wemby, Bam, and OG Anunoby. I'm going to lean OG Anunoby because I think Wemby's going to have the stats and the highlights to back it up. But I think in terms of team defense, I think they won't even be close to the top end of the league. But in Bam Adebayo's case, I think he's a depoy waiting to happen. But I'm going to lean my top two, kind of 1A, 1B. I think Bam or OG, I think he's going to win the award. Wemby is obviously going to be one of the favorites, but I think the depoy award needs to come down to team success as well on the defensive side of the ball, not just individual defense as well. I think there's two different arguments for it. And I think OG Anunoby, I want to lean to win the award because I think the Knicks defense from him and Mikal is going to be a top echelon of the league. So I'm going to lean with OG Anunoby as my depoy. Clutch player of the year, always a tough one to predict. I have Steph Curry, Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell, three guys I always see in close situations. I'm going to go with Donovan Mitchell. I think Cleveland Cavaliers are in for a season where they're in a lot of close games. And I feel like Donovan Mitchell can win clutch player of the year. Going into All-NBA first teams, second teams, and third teams. First team, I have Devin Booker, SGA, Jason Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid's a question mark on this because of the games played. Like I said, we already talked about kind of like him not playing back-to-back, so that's a whole situation as well. But I do think that is going to be the NBA first team. NBA second team, I have Luka Doncic, Tyrese Halliburton, Anthony Edwards, Anthony Davis, Nikola Jokic. All-NBA third team, I have Jalen Brunson, De'Aaron Fox, Paolo Banchero, LeBron James, and Domantas Sabonis. Some guys that I think are going to be right on the bubble are guys like Steph Curry, I see Jimmy Butler being on the edge if he has a good, healthy year. Jaylen Brown, Kevin Durant. Like guys like that, I feel like can still be on the bubble. And looking at this, looking at third team, I do have Sacramento Kings getting two, De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis. They're coming off a year where they didn't have either one of them. The Sabonis was one of the best players in all of basketball last year. So looking at that, I think they both make it. And if De'Aaron Fox does make an All-NBA team, he has the chance to have the highest paid contract in the league. If I'm wording that right, he would be surpassing Jason Tatum and be eligible for one of the highest paying contracts ever. I think it is the highest paying contract ever in the NBA. So if he makes an All-NBA team, he will be looking at an insane bag from the Sacramento Kings. And I think they get both De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis. All defensive first team, Victor Wembanyama, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Bam Adebayo, and Jrue Holiday. All defensive second team, I have Jaylen Brown, Rudy Gobert, Anthony Davis, Jalen Suggs, Herb Jones. So the Herb Jones pick, if they do run him at the 5 and he shows insane versatility and being able to really sit down and defend at that 5 position, he has to be an all-defensive level player, right? If he's playing the 5, he's still doing what he got to do. Jalen Suggs, I think he's going to be turning into one of the best 3-and-D players in all of basketball in the Orlando Magic. I think they're going to have a top 3 to 5 defense in the league. Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, we don't really need to explain anything about them too. Jaylen Brown really took some strides and steps from what we saw last year in the playoffs. He has that ability to sit down and defend and get in a chair. He's somebody where I think it's going to be either him or Derek White on that Celtics team. I don't think they get all 3, but I think they get definitely one of them. 2 of the 3, I guess, on the ball. So it's Jrue Holiday, Jaylen Brown. I think the Knicks get 2, and the Magic get 1. Those are kind of the 3 of the 5 teams I think will have the top defenses in the league. Same with the Rudy Gobert being in there as well. But I think I got Wemby up there because he's going to put up the stats to do so. Now looking at the playoffs. Going to start at the Eastern Conference play-in, go to the round 1, round 2 in the conference finals of the Eastern Conference, then same on the Western Conference side. Looking at the Eastern Conference play-in, I have 7-8 matchup between the Cavs and Heat, 9-10 matchup between Detroit and Atlanta. The 7th seed, Miami Heat wins the second game, gets the 8th seed. So I have the Cavs at the 7th seed, Miami at the 8th seed. Going into the first round, I have Pacers and the Miami Heat in the first round. I said the Indiana Pacers are the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. I think they're going to be a phenomenal regular season team. They made the Cinderella run last year. I think they get a tough pull in Miami. If this Miami Heat team is healthy going into the playoffs, I think Miami wins this series. I think Miami is going to be a tough pull for this team defensively, and with what they have, I think they would have actually the best player in this series in Jimmy Butler. And I think the defense that they can put on the Indiana Pacers can really slow that offense down in a series format. And I think we get an upset of a 1-8 matchup. And I think the Miami Heat beat the Indiana Pacers in the first round in 6 games. I think they beat the 1 seed, has the 8 seed, and go on to the second round. First round, 4-5 matchup, I have the Bucks and the Philadelphia 76ers. This would be a heck of a series. A lot of pressure on both these teams. I do think Philly, if they are healthy, is a little bit more versatile than this Bucks team when healthy. I'm going to go with the Philadelphia 76ers to win this series in 6 games over the Milwaukee Bucks, and this would be a catastrophic loss, losing again in the first round for the Milwaukee Bucks, and I think the Sixers would be able to get it done in 6 games. Going on to the 2-7 matchup by the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers, rematch of last year's second round. I still think Boston is just superior. I think Boston will get it done in 6, maybe even 5. I just think they're just the superior team, and the Cavs don't really match up well enough with the Boston Celtics for me to really think this is going to be any kind of a real series. Now, 3-6 matchup, I have the New York Knicks, Orlando Magic. I have the Knicks winning in 5. I think the Orlando Magic are going to have a really, really good defense as well. Question marks on their offense still. But I think the New York Knicks are just the superior team still. I think they match up too well with the Orlando Magic in terms of Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, 2 guys you can throw on Paolo and Franz. I just think this would be a tough get for the Orlando Magic, and I think the New York Knicks will get it done in somewhere around 5 games. Going to the second round of the Eastern Conference, I have the 8th-seeded Miami Heat versus the 5th-seeded Philadelphia 76ers. This would be a tough pull for the 76ers if Joel Embiid's healthy at this point. Miami, I think, would play them tough, but I think the size of a Joel Embiid and his command that he can have on a series, even with a Bam Adebayo level defender, I just think Philadelphia would edge out Miami, and I think this is where Miami's road would end in the playoffs. I think I got to go Philadelphia winning this series in 5. Now, 2-3 matchup, Boston and New York. This would be a heck of a series. I'm going to go Boston in 7. I just think that at times we're going to see this New York Knicks team be too Jalen Brunson dependent in terms of getting the offense going. Going back to the kind of argument why I said earlier about a win-win trade, I think the spacing is needed in New York from Cat, while the shot creation was needed from Randall and DiVincenzo in Minnesota. I just think this Knicks team, losing 2 guys that can create their own shot, and Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, can hurt them against a team like Boston, who has kind of the makeup. They match up really, really well with each other. Boston is tailor-made to stop good guards. With Jrue Holiday, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, they are tailor-made to stop teams with very explosive guards. Go look at the entire run of their playoffs last year. Did a great job on Luka and Kyrie. Great job on Tyler Hero in the first round. Great job on Darius Garland in the second round, and Donovan Mitchell at points when he did play. And in the conference finals, they did a really, really good job on Halliburton for the most part, especially with guys like Jrue Holiday and Derek White. This is just a tough matchup to where I think my New York Knicks team is going to be together for a couple of seasons, to where I don't think this is a championship or bust year for them. This is all right, we need to get continuity with this unit that we have. I think they lose to the Boston Celtics in 7 games. Going into the Eastern Conference Finals, Philadelphia 76ers and the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. I have to go Boston in 7. They've seemed to have Philadelphia's number in the playoffs for years and years and years, but I think this Boston Celtics team, we haven't seen a team in this decade go back to the finals after winning it the year before. I think Boston is the first team to break that streak, and I think Boston gets back to the NBA Finals out of the Eastern Conference. Now going into the Western Conference, looking at the plan, I have the Lakers and Denver Nuggets at the 7-8 matchup, and I have the Denver Nuggets winning that first game and getting the 7th seed, but I have the Lakers defeating the Memphis Grizzlies to get that 8th seed in the Western Conference. So at the 9-10 matchup, I did have Memphis and Houston. I have Memphis beating Houston, and I had the Lakers beating Memphis to have the Lakers make that 8th seeded spot. Going into the playoffs, could be an interesting series. I mean, OKC versus the Lakers. I have OKC winning in at 6, but you have LeBron and Anthony Davis. You can never count both of them out, especially with how I think this Lakers team can operate offensively. I think they're going to take a jump in that category as well. But at the 8th seed, I don't see them beating the OKC Thunder. I have the OKC winning in 6. 4-5 matchup, I have Dallas and the Phoenix Suns. I have the upset here. I think the Phoenix Suns get it done against Dallas. I think this team has the makeup, and I just feel like they're going to be able to withstand a playoff series better than they have in the past. I feel like it's going to be a lot more balanced and not just oh, we have to have Devin Booker have an explosive night. We have to have Kevin Durant have an explosive night. I think you're going to get a really, really good year out of their big three. And I think they upset the Dallas Mavericks in the first round of that 4-5 matchup. 2-7 matchup, I also think Phoenix Suns get it done in 6. In the 2-7 matchup, I have the Sacramento Kings and the Denver Nuggets. I have Sacramento Kings taking out the Denver Nuggets in the first round. I think they're going to be able to do it in 7 games. I could even see 6. I think they're going to take care of the Denver Nuggets in the first round and move on to the second round. Very high on Sacramento this year. 3-6 matchup, I have the Wolves versus Golden State. I think this is a very, very tough pull for the Warriors. I think they match up better with legit every other team that I have making the playoffs other than the Minnesota Timberwolves, just because of the size that Minnesota does have. Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, Naz Reid off the bench. Like, they just have size at that front court position that I don't think Golden State can match. I do think that depth in Golden State, I will give Steph Curry 2 games in this series. I have the Minnesota Timberwolves winning in 6 games, though. Going on to the second round. 1-5 matchup, OKC versus the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns are going to be my team that I think makes the run this year. When you're looking at the playoffs from the past year, it seems like different teams are making different runs. The NBA has been wide open. I think the Phoenix Suns are that team that makes the run this year. I have them beating the Mavericks in round 1, and I think they're going to upset the Oklahoma City Thunder in round 2. I have the Phoenix Suns winning this series in 7 games. I think they just match up a lot better with a lot of teams in the playoffs this year. So I have the Phoenix Suns beating the OKC Thunder in 7 games. 2-3 matchup, I have the Sacramento Kings versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. This is just a tough matchup for Sacramento, especially from a defensive aspect. With 3 guys that they can throw on Sabonis and Randall, Naz Reid, and Rudy Gobert. I think this is a tough matchup for the Sacramento Kings. A very successful season from them as well, though, if this all plays out like I think it will. I have the Minnesota Timberwolves taking care of business in around 5 games. Now, going on to the Western Conference Finals, I have the Phoenix Suns and the Minnesota Timberwolves on the Western Conference side. Going to the finals, I do have the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think defensively they match up really, really well. I think they're the scariest team to play in the Western Conference from a defensive aspect. And I do think they will end up getting it done against the Phoenix Suns like they did last year in about 6 games. But I do think it will be a way better series than it was this past season. In the NBA Finals, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Boston Celtics. I think the Boston Celtics, this is a tough series. I think it could go either way. But I do think I'm going to lean the Boston Celtics going back-to-back. I think the Boston Celtics are going to win this series in 7 games, and the NBA Finals will be Jason Tatum winning his first Finals MVP. After winning, I think, the MVP as well, so he'll have Finals MVP, All-NBA First Team, and MVP in the same season. I think Jason Tatum is in for a monster year, and I do think the Boston Celtics will be going back-to-back this season. Now, going into my 5 hot takes, like I said, I'm going to have probably more by the time I get this uploaded and before the season even starts on next Tuesday. But kind of talked about and glazed over some hot takes in this video already. Pacers, I think, will finish as the 1 seed out east. Denver Nuggets will finish in the play-in tournament this year. There's going to be a big blockbuster kind of move at this year's deadline that is going to affect the landscape of the NBA. That's one of my hot takes. I think the Knicks and Timberwolves trade, looking back on it in a couple of years, even at the end of this next season, will be going down as the best win-win trade in NBA history. There will be 4+ coaches fired this NBA season. I think a couple candidates could be Chauncey Billups. Not that I think any of these coaches are bad, but I just think due to the teams and the direction that they're possibly going in, maybe want to part ways and go get more of a developmental-minded coach for the future. I think Chauncey Billups is up there as a candidate. I think Billy Donovan is also a candidate up there as well. I think Willie Green from the Pelicans. I think Willie Green is a really, really good coach, but if the Pelicans continue to underperform, I think that could be in question for them as well. Not too sold. I wonder what they're going to do with Quinn Snyder if the Hawks have another bad year, because the Hawks are a team that is always looking to low-key compete. So looking at that, I think there are a couple different coaches where I could see them moving on and getting fired. And I would say not getting fired. I think parting ways is also in a conversation with this, because I think Ty Lue could legit part ways if the Clippers are going into a different direction. With now the Kawhi Leonard news that we do know, Tyronn Lue could be just parting ways to maybe go coach a more contending level team. So I think there are a couple coaches in the league that I think could be parting ways / getting fired in that same conversation this upcoming season. Those are my 5 hot takes. I'm probably going to add more to my personal Twitter account as well. But that is all I have for my predictions episode. It's going to be an insane season. I know I got some pretty hot takes in here of like the Sacramento Kings as the 2 seed, Pacers as the 1 seed, but I feel like the past couple of NBA seasons, there's always that team that kind of breaks out onto the scene and makes a crazy run like we saw the Pacers do last year. Heat did a couple of years ago, I think. So I think I've kind of gained a little bit of more faith in these predictions that I do have, but that is all I do have for this episode of Let's Talk About It. Thank you guys for tuning into the Barrel Talk podcast. So we see you tune in to future episodes.